In this update, we've got potential tropical cyclone 2 that looks to become a hurricane. Then, yet we have another tropical wave trailing behind that one. Then, yes, we have another tropical disturbance that has drifted out into the Gulf of Mexico. So, we got a lot to talk about in this upcoming update. So, if you are new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and notification bell to get all my daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. So let's take a look at the overall satellite picture this morning. We've got a lot happening. You can see if the flare-up convection down here by Trinidad, they do have tropical storm warnings in place right now. It's a potential tropical cyclone 2. Hurricane hunters went out yesterday, did not find a closed low, but they did have winds of 40 miles an hour. So that's why it has a potential tropical cyclone. Once they have a closed low and have a low-level center, that's when it'll be upgraded to Tropical Storm Bonnie. And this is drifting west over the coming days at around 23 miles an hour. And then we have another system out here trailing behind that one. That's also going to be a formidable wave as well. And yes, we have another system that's just now coming off the African coast. We've got a huge area of high pressure up here that's actually helping drift these things westbound over the coming days and really over the next couple of weeks, because it really doesn't seem like the overall pattern is going to change. It's very rare to see these conveyor belt this time of year coming off the African coast, off the Cape Verde season is getting really active so early, so soon. So we also have another area of convection that has drifted out into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico that is also of concern closer to land for the next couple of days. So we'll be detailing out this breakdown on this tropical update. So let's take a look at the overall setup right now on potential tropical cyclone 2. It does have 40 miles an hour. It continues to drift westbound. You see how low it is? This is very rare. It's really low and it's traversing. It's supposed to be, it's expected to be a tropical storm probably sometime tomorrow. I mean, the hurricane hunters are going to be out there later on this afternoon. It could be upgraded today. As soon as they find like a closed low, they will be upgraded into this to Tropical Storm Bonnie. But right now it is forecasted continued westbound about 23 miles an hour and then really kind of amplifying and potentially become a hurricane right there along the coast, anywhere from between Nicaragua and Costa Rica by late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And this will continue westbound and may even drift back up into the open waters of the Pacific, because right now it's still forecast to be a tropical depression by then, just south of El Salvador. So as I mentioned, this is a very, very rare event. And these are all the tropical storm development between January 1st and August 1st, right? So this is, we have records that go back all the way since 1851. So you've got 170 years of history here. And all these areas to the north of there, that's where tropical storm formation has formed between, right, essentially January 1st and August 1st, right? So early on in the season. But look where potential tropical cyclone 2 is. It's well down south. This is in rare territory. Hardly any storms whatsoever in the last 170 years have actually been in this trajectory this so far south. So this is definitely rare and almost somewhat really concerning that this is so active so early. Just kind of tells you what's possibility going to be on the table as we get deeper into hurricane season. But yeah, the hurricane hunters went out yesterday. This is their flight path. They did not actually find a low-level center, so they'll be out there again today, flying out of this storm, investigating it, and see if they do in fact happen to find a closed low-level center, and that's when it'll be upgraded officially to Tropical Storm Bonnie. But between now and then, that's where these are the potential tropical storm force winds could be, and to kind of give you an overall timeline impacting Venezuela by tomorrow morning around 8 a.m., eventually heading near Colombia about Thursday 8 a.m., and then getting out back into the open waters. It looks to be south of the island of Jamaica, but it continues to burst, and I think this is where it is forecasted to intensify, and it is forecasted right now officially from the National Hurricane Center to be bumped up to a potential hurricane actually right before landfall. So right now they've got landfall essentially anywhere from Costa Rica to Nicaragua all the way up to Honduras. with kind of the center right here into the portions of Nicaragua sometime, late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And then the trajectory would continue westbound. It could actually reemerge on the Pacific side sometime this weekend. But here's the overall wind field right now with this particular storm. It's going to grace the southern side of the Windward Islands here and then continue westbound. Like I mentioned, it does looks to be the tropical storm winds looks to be south of the island of Jamaica, but then have those winds somewhat intensify, potentially becoming a hurricane out here in these open waters, and then make landfall somewhere in from Costa Rica to Nicaragua. Could be as high as north as of Honduras. So by the time we get into Friday afternoon, Friday night, early Saturday morning time frame. But here's where we stand right now. So we're expecting heavy rainfall is expected across the Windward Islands and northern Venezuela tonight through Wednesday. Localized flash flooding is possible. So we got winds, the tropical storm force winds over portions of the southern Windward Islands tonight, and tropical storm course conditions are possible along the northeastern coast of Venezuela tonight into Wednesday. So there's a higher than normal uncertainty of this system with intensity, but it does remain, it looks to be a formidable tropical storm and dump a lot of heavy rainfall, especially near Costa Rica and Nicaragua. And that area has been inundated with a lot of flash flooding as of late. And unfortunately, it looks to be that kind of a bullseye area later on into Friday going into Saturday. So if you live in those areas, you need to be in high alert on this potential path from what looks to be Bonnie sometime later on today. So here's the overall wind field from the latest European guidance. Right now, you saw the official track for the National Hurricane Center. These are all the max wind field, max gust potentially coming out of the Windward Islands. Most of the winds keep south of the island Jamaica, but even with the European guidance, it has it continue to possibly strengthen along with the National Hurricane Center, really kind of right before potential landfall somewhere between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. But yeah, the dominating force has been this ridge of high pressure over Bermuda. And this is a huge area of high pressure. It's a much bigger than what you would typically see kind of an average hurricane season. So it is concerning that this is more or less locked in place so early, and this Cape Verde season is in play already. So this is very early in the season, but you can see basically a conveyor belt of tropical waves continue to come off the African coast, and these will traverse westbound. And with this ridge of high pressure to the north, that's just going to help steer these further into the Caribbean, potentially heading into the Bahamas, Turks and Caicos. And with this high pressure, depending on if it's strong, it continues to remain west. If subtle signs of weakening, they tend to lift it a little bit further northwest. So over time, this puts the U.S. or more or less the Caribbean more into play. And with this ridge, it has less probabilities of lifting north and going out to sea. So that is definitely the concern with this hurricane season. So let's take a look at the overall setup for this formidable system out here into the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, because this is the second system we're going to be highlighting. So they've upgraded this from a 20% to a 30% chance. So we've been talking about this system for several days of this little mesoscale convective system with this coastal low. Mesoscale convective system came in, then we had the cold front drift in. Now today we should have a low pressure center trying to form. So the National Hurricane Center has been ahead of this system, saying, hey, we could be looking at a possibility of a low end tropical storm development with this system. So right now it's got an area of low pressure that is centered over the northwestern Gulf of Mexico. Showers and thunderstorms active associated with this low will be drifting overnight. It's very disorganized right now, but some additional development is expected, and it's going to be drifting west southwest over the next 2 days. And I think once it stops, the upper level winds will be able to help lift this convection further to the north and pull the moisture back into Texas, back into Louisiana, and I think eventually basically get it possibly into Arkansas. So here's where we stand right now with the satellite picture kind of zoomed in. So you can see it's basically just an area of disturbed weather very disorganized right now, but the low pressure system with that cold front is just now getting into the Gulf. So that's going to help, potentially lower these pressures. And I'm sure the National Hurricane Center will be investigating this area fairly soon, because right now it's got about a 30%. It only has a small window to develop. I mean, most of the guidance has this drifting west southwest and potentially be close to land by the time we get into, say, Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. So it's only got about 2.5 days of if it is going to be a tropical depression or a tropical storm to be able to be upgraded. So it's got to have some sort of, all this is actually got to be coming together, and then it's got to obviously have a low level center, and then it's got to have winds of at least 35 for a depression or 40 miles an hour for a tropical storm. So regardless of development or not, it definitely appears to be a pretty heavy rainmaker, just to the south and more or less South Texas. So here's the latest ensemble member guidance right now. So this is the latest European guidance. Essentially has this drifting west southwest over the next 24 to 48 hours, has it stopping out in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico, and then the upper level winds will help drift this further to the north. The GFS guidance is not on par with that. That have it actually can continue to shift it, west to southwest, and actually pull the center, possibly, if there is a center, south of Texas into Mexico. But the GFS hasn't been very helpful lately with these tropical systems. But overall, those short-term convection models are kind of hinting at, hey, they're combining, with the ensembles, and then the shorter term convection has that probability of lifting. Obviously, you can see some uncertainty still with where the overall track of this system will go. But more or less, let's take a look at the icon and the European, because I'm favoring at this point these two blend of models and kind of a mix of these models. I think most of the guidance has this drifting west southwest over the coming days, and this is the latest icon model, which is the German model. I like this pretty well. It has wind speeds up to 35 miles an hour, and these are actual wind gusts, so that would not be actually a tropical depression. It'd be borderline, very, very borderline. But it has a potential low level center, somewhere around Corpus Christi by about, Thursday night time frame. And then the winds typically on these tropical type systems are typically right side loaded. It's not verbatim, but most tropical systems are typically right side loaded, which means it would have the higher winds, and the winds really aren't a concern with this system. It would just be the heavier rainfall would be lifting northward over the coming days. And hey, this area definitely needs rain, right? So this whole area, and the latest European guidance kind of has the same kind of idea. It has this potential somewhat low level center, right along the Corpus Christi coast, with most of the convection to the right of that by the time we get into that Thursday, a little bit sooner, Thursday afternoon. So that, more or less Thursday, that's kind of gives you a ballpark of where this system could be. But as it lifts north, here's the latest icon. So obviously these are preliminary data. It all depends on the exact track of this particular system. But most guidance has this drifting west southwest, and it would be right side loaded. And then most of the convection, most of the instability, most of the rain would be on the right side as well. So it would drift further north. This is the latest icon guidance, having several inches of rain over Houston, Galveston, into East Texas, pulling the moisture into Louisiana, and eventually headed into potentially Arkansas. This is through the July 4th holiday, right? Here's the latest European guidance. Has it lifted a little bit further off west, but still into East Texas. It has most of the convection, essentially, even though the center may be somewhere around Corpus Christi, most of the convection is right-sided loaded. So it puts most of the convection into Victoria, into Houston, into Galveston, into East Texas, and going into Southeast Texas. And this will drift into Louisiana and potentially Arkansas with several inches of rain. This is the latest European guidance. So I think it's more of a mix between these overall guidance. And here's the latest Weather Prediction Center from this particular storm as well. Has the overall system essentially South Texas into East Texas through the July 4th weekend. So now let's take a look at that other system, that's behind the potential tropical cyclone 2. So this is another kind of formidable wave coming off the Akron coast. The National Hurricane Center has that a 20% chance of potentially coming tropical over the next 5 days as this continues to verse westbound. overall, this one looks to be a little bit further north, because by then I think the ridge is going to be weakening a little bit. And then that way it'll allow that system on the backside to be able to lift a little bit further north of the tropical cyclone that we're dealing with, or going to be dealing with over the coming days. But overall, here's the latest precipitation anomalies on where these storms could potentially be, at least the heavier rain amounts, over the next 2 weeks. So with that ridge of high pressure in place over the Bermuda High, it will have these tropical waves continued westbound, and it's got above average rains literally impacting further south into Venezuela with that storm to the further south into Nicaragua, Costa Rica, into Panama. But that other track could potentially lift further north, impacting more of a Jamaica, more Cuba, more Turks and Caicos, more Bahamas. And then combined with that system within the Gulf of Mexico too, it has more favored tracks with heavier above average rains along the coast, and then into the portions of the southeast potentially over the next 2 weeks, with all this tropical activity that's going to be coming off. These waves are going to be coming off the African coast. So that'll kind of give you an idea of these systems. That's the latest update from the tropics with these 3 systems. So I appreciate you guys watching. I will definitely keep you informed, and not only with these systems, but throughout hurricane season, because I am expecting a very active season, and this goes all the way through the end of November. So we got a lot to talk about. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update while I protect you before and after the storm.